Harris and Greg Lehman, also Ann Dimmick, all are the people down at Watershed that have been so generous to us and have become our sponsors. A watershed moment might be pivotal, but it might also be quiet and fleeting. It could be a moment, occasion, a cause for celebration, an enormous triumph, or a small daily victory. A watershed moment could be a rekindling or an observance or gathering. Any opportunity to relish with friends and family. It's whatever you choose to cheers to, who you're gathered around, and whatever's worth celebrating. We founded Watershed Distillery on the principles of community in 2010. We wanted to live in, work in, and contribute to the community in which we grew up. We aimed to create spirits that stood apart in quality and character. Along the way, we set out to form a community of our own, one that could gather together to savor, celebrate, and enjoy good spirits and company. We've grown from a tiny little still and two guys in jumpsuits to a dedicated team of over 40 people and two much larger stills. If you're ever in the area, stop by so we can introduce you to our team and pour you some of our award-winning bourbon. Creating it was our watershed moment, but we want to hear about yours. Barrel finished gin, Monks Road. They've got dry gin, Monks Road, and then they've got Monks Road 100 proof 5th District Series bourbon. The first release in our 5th District Series pays homage to Cold Spring Distillery, a historic distillery in southern Nelson County, Kentucky that was located just a stone's throw from the site of our new distillery today. This 6-year-old single barrel bourbon masterfully blends notes of corn, rye, and malted barley for a product that revives the spirit of yesterday. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hold on, I don't have audio. Let me see. It might be me. Oh, let's see. Are you there?
Yeah, are you?
Yes, I'm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Oh, hi. Nice to meet you.
I had an old link, I guess.
Oh, you had the old link? So when I sent, did you get the new one when I sent it to you?
Yeah, just now.
Okay.
But the one I was trying before, it said Russell's Reserve.
Yeah, that was the wrong one. And Amy, she said to send a new one, but I figured that might be the problem. That's why I just tried to get it to you.
I can talk about Russell's Reserve. I like it. It's good, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So wonderful to meet you.
Good.
Initially, when I first was, I've been to Buffalo Trace on many tours. I love, the Scotchy Bourbon Boys love Buffalo Trace. It's kind of when we're driving down from Ohio, it's our meeting place for everybody. So we just love stopping by, but I didn't have any at the moment or whatever. I had no contacts to get, with you until Greg Schneider mentioned that he knew you. So, and Greg Schneider's a good, he's been with us from the start and very supportive. And so when he said that, I took the opportunity to, get to be able to, get you on the podcast.
Yeah, how's Greg doing?
Oh, he's doing really well. His wife is having some problems and, health issues and everything, but overall, Greg's doing well. He's working on the chicken cock brand.
Right.
That's what he's distilling that, but he's taken everything he's learned in the business and is putting it into that. So he's still a couple of years away from getting that onto the market. So I have you. I'll keep it as short as I can. I know that your time with what's been going on at the distillery is limited.
Yeah, we're wide open these days, that's for sure.
Yeah, initially, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is just the construction that's going on, and how much, as the master distiller, how much of that are you actually overseeing and a part of, and kind of just take us through what the vision is when it's all finished.
Well, I'm I'm very heavily involved because, at the end of the day, the pie goes in my face, so I want to make sure everything's done right and following our processes. And so the idea behind it is basically to duplicate our operation that we have now and be able to create make whiskey with the quality that we're used to. And so we left all of our processes the same, exact same. All we did was expand everything and made everything bigger and faster, and we're able to produce a lot more barrels per day. But the vision is pretty simple. It's to cram as much operation as we can into our current footprint without changing our National Historic Landmark designation, which is kind of a big deal for us, and we're still very happy to have. And so in order to do that, everything we put in has to complement our our history and our current buildings and all the operations that we have now. And that takes a little bit extra money. Sometimes we have to spend a little extra to make sure things look right. And all the while we're putting this stuff in, it has to work right and it has to, maintain our quality and our processes. So that's kind of, I kid about it, but, one of the things COVID did was allow me to spend more time, on a day-to-day basis on the operation. And without COVID, it would have been a lot more difficult because, I would maybe I did a lot more traveling. I was on the road 3 or 4 days a month on average. And when I'm on the road and things are going on like that, it's a lot more difficult. So what COVID has done is allowed me to have time designated to construction and projects and all the things we got going on and expansion. So that's the only positive to the COVID.
Yeah, it's it's changed a lot of things for people, and a lot of times it's in the demand for bourbon and whiskeys has gone up, and I know you guys have been running full for a long time, and it's tough to meet that demand. Mm-hmm. But maybe now I know that you're putting another still in, the same still next to it, and mm-hmm. that's getting close. One of the things when I was on tour that I asked one of the tour guides is that, you've got Blanton's and you've got Cornel Taylor, and they're coming out of different, the same warehouses consistently. So as a challenge to you as a master distiller, and then getting those into, you're building warehouses, you're building more metal warehouses, and you're building more warehouses similar to what, like you said, you're keeping the footprint the same. What kind of challenge is it to be able to almost, increase that production, but it's not coming from that same, what I'd like to, since you've been doing this for so long, it's like a comfort zone. So you're going to, talk about that challenge.
Yeah, before, I'm talking 25 years ago, we spent a lot of time and effort to fully understand our current processes. We've documented and tested and did a lot of upfront work to fully understand a lot of the things we're doing. So when we start this expansion project, we're able to make sure and ensure that none of these processes are changing, even though we're expanding. So for example, in the warehouses, you're right, we are expanding our warehousing. We're building a new warehouse every 3 months right now, and we're filling it up as fast as we build them. But some things we did different is we changed our heating plan where we have a little more better control of our heat. And then we also insulated those warehouses. Even though they're metal clad, they're fully insulated. So what we tried to do was mimic a lot of the warehouses that we have down at the original site. And what we've done is we've got data, for the last 7 or 8 years now of temperature and humidity of all these floors. And then we can compare the temperature and humidity of these the new warehouses. And what we're seeing is, by design, we're seeing almost identical results. And so what that's able, of course, the thought is we're going to turn out very similar whiskey, and I feel pretty good about it because the data looks good. And the other thing I think is these new warehouses are going to actually maybe turn out even better whiskey. So we'll see. We're excited about that. We're already dumping some of the new barrel warehouse whiskey. Now it's 3 and 4 year old stuff, but we're seeing really good, consistent results, and we're very happy with it. So, we had to spend an extra $1 million a warehouse to make sure the insulation was right and the heating's right. But for quality, so we've built 10 of them so far. So there you go. We spent $10 million in warehousing just for quality alone. And, for us, it's definitely, everybody knows it's worth it, right? I mean, you're getting consistent tasting product is the whole idea. And the problem that we have, it is a problem, but it's a good problem. The problem that we have is our demand continues to grow. And so there's no end to it. Even when we're done with this expansion, we're going to continue to expand our warehousing. We're going to continue to expand the distilling. Well, what that means is we may have to build another distillery because we're not planning to stop. Even when we max out the current expansion, we'll do whatever it takes to make more whiskey. As long as the demand's there, we're going to continue to expand. So it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Considering, the history and where you are in this time period of producing these brands that the master distillers before you have produced, and what kind of, you're basically with this expansion and then maybe talking about starting to build another distillery. Those are two things that when people 100 years from now are talking about, have been responsible for overseeing and being part of that and moving that part of the project over. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. You want people to look back and, when I do finally ride off into the sunset, they want to, I'd like for people to see, all the hard work by the team. It's not one person. I mean, we've done a lot of work. We've gone from when I started, we had 50 people at the distillery, and now we have 550. So we've really expanded the manpower, and we've got a lot of really good, talented help here that are all passionate all the way down the list, all 550. If you walk through the plant, every person here is passionate, and you can just feel the pride that people take in producing this whiskey, and for people to enjoy. So you want to look back on that legacy and make sure that it's done properly and no gaps.
Yeah, and speaking of the expansion, but also when you started the expansion a couple of years ago, you found the Cornel Taylor fermenting room.
Yep.
And then you had an archaeological dig, basically. Mm-hmm. And I just, when I came down initially, before we were thinking that we would podcast, live, but because of COVID and everything, we're doing this, but we were able to get on the Cornel Taylor tour, which I've been trying to get on for a while. But that tour and what you're doing there, maybe talk a little bit about the actual, that fermenting, where you're fermenting and what you're doing with that.
Well, we always knew that distillery was there, but we did not realize that they just covered it up. We assumed that they destroyed everything, and after the fire and all the things they did, they just covered it up and built a new building and went on about their business. But so we had some big ideas to go in and turn that OFC building that we have into basically a meeting area, event space, And so we went in there and started digging into the foundation because we wanted to, renovate all that. And once we did, we realized that they left the fermenters. Basically, they just covered them up. And along with a lot of the original foundations of the buildings and all that. So as we started digging, we realized there's a bigger picture here, not just for, office space and event space. We're going to show people some of our history. And so we just basically did our best to preserve everything that was covered up and, dug it all up and, explained it and lit it up and put catwalks in for people to see it. And then we also had the idea of why not put one back into service, and which I thought was a great idea. And so we took about a year and a half to get the copper that we needed from the copper mine, because it was, you can't just run out and buy a sheet of, quarter-inch thick copper, for fermentation. So we had to get in line and buy it straight from the copper mill. And we brought the copper in and lined that fermenter like it was originally. Now, I tend to believe that our coppers might be a little bit better quality than it was 150 years ago. But anyway, we got it all lined up, and we hooked up pumps and piping, and we're now fermenting every week in there. And that kind of coincided, and that was just purely coincidental, because we actually have a patent pending on this process of fermentation naturally. And that's the original old Taylor way that they did it in the OFC building. So we were actually working on that in parallel with this project. And so now we're actually fermenting the original way from 1860 with a patent pending fermentation process that we're doing every week in there, and putting some barrels away for the future. And I guess we started that a couple of years ago. So we've got maybe 2-year-old whiskey in the warehouse aging, from that original process. And it's a pretty interesting thing, because those fermenters they behave a little differently because they're actually submerged in the ground, right? So you get the heat sink in the ground where it ferments a little bit differently than normal fermenters that we have. And so we're getting some product that's interesting, and we'll see how it tastes when it comes out.
That's excellent. I just hope that I'm able to, when it does come out, obtain it, because I know it's going to be limited. Wow. But you never know. We might become friends, and I'll be able to taste a little.
Yeah. Well, people do think that I can get unlimited whiskey, but that's, I'm just like you guys. You can't get enough of it around.
Yeah, you get to taste it before it goes out, but overall, it's going out.
Yeah, it's a teaser. It's a teaser.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is that when you were younger, you worked with Elmer T Lee, and mm-hmm. Elmer was one of, I know that you worked close, talking to Greg, that you guys worked close, and you learned a lot from him. Just kind of go over a little bit what that was like.
So early on, I started in 1995 and came in, and, Elmer was at that time, I guess, fairly newly retired, but he still came. He did a lot of PR for us, and he came to the plant probably 2 or 3 times a week. And I probably spent the first 5 years of my career spending a lot of time with Elmer. A lot of personal time. I mean, fishing trips and events and things that we did. And I played a lot of golf with him, and that, this guy was 80-something years old at the time, and hitting a golf ball 200 yards down the middle with a 1-iron. And I've got a lot of stories to tell, but we had a lot in common. He was a mechanical engineer. He thought a lot of the same ways that I think, and so we just hit it off. And I did get to know him personally and learned a lot from him. I asked him about 1 million questions. He probably got tired of answering them, but he actually never did. I don't think. He actually was very willing and enjoyed it, I think. I mean, he brought me stuff from his house that, some of the history and of the plant, because he saw it. He was here since World War II, right? So he saw a lot of changes and a lot of upgrades, and I just learned a lot from him and developed a lot of respect, for this guy, and it was, I'm so fortunate and glad to get to know him, and the distillery itself benefited from all that, because you're able to, basically learn a lot and carry on a lot of the things that he learned, and get a good start for the future. So invaluable experience, and I'm thankful for it every day. So.
Well, he definitely, just by what you just said, his love for, even after he retired, it's just that this business of, creating and making good whiskey is a passion that just is never out of you. I don't think it ever leaves.
No.
But I want to ask you, you don't have to answer the question, but I heard a story about you and Elmer on a canoe trip down the river. Did you want to kind of go over that, or don't you?
Well, I did. So again, early on, probably maybe I was here 6 or 7 years, and we're going down. We decided to go on this trip together. We went on a canoe trip down, and I can't remember the name of the river, probably because it was so scarring. But Elmer was, even back then, kind of a living legend, right? And I'm in the back of the canoe, and he's in the front, and we're going down the river there, and it was pretty significant whitewater. I mean, it was pretty good, and I got a little nervous, and anyway, I told Elmer to go left, and we went right instead. And then when we did, we hit a big root ball in a tree and flipped us over, and basically almost killed him. And he went under and popped up maybe 50 yards down the stream. Here's about an 85-year-old guy, getting flipped in a canoe, and I would have went down as the guy who killed him. So that would have been bad. And anyway, we both survived it. He was a trooper, got right back in the canoe, and we made it okay. But I sure felt bad for a while. He was wringing his socks out, and the water was a little chilly, I remember too. But we could have been pretty hurt. Both of us could have been hurt on that, because it was pretty serious whitewater, and we shouldn't have ever been on that water, by the way. So I blame the events people, but we ended up doing that and survived it and have a good tale to tell.
Well, yeah.
We had a good bourbon afterwards and had a good laugh about it. But
what was the bourbon?
Well, of course, it was probably Elmer T Lee. But
there you go. Well, when the story was being told to me, that it wasn't told to me. They knew that you had that, you had that responsibility. You felt the responsibility of it. Yeah. But everybody, when he pulled out and nothing happened, they all knew that Elmer probably had a good experience, and it's for himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. Not everybody can say they survived something like that, but
yeah. So, all right. So, let's see. There was one other. Oh, the last thing I wanted to ask you: how, when it comes to the Pappy Van Winkle line, I know you're distilling it, correct? And you work with the family. So, what is that like as far as an experience of producing that, and how much involved? I know they have a lot of involvement, and it's not like you're just like what you would be doing with the other brands. It's a little different experience as a master distiller.
Yeah, it is a little different, because you've got a family, a long history of bourbon tradition there, and we're fortunate to be partners, and for them to promote that brand and for us to make that whiskey, we take it very serious. And again, it's a legacy thing that you don't want to mess up. You want to be consistently making really good tasting whiskey. And it is a little different, because it's some of the oldest bourbon whiskey out there on the market. And so it's not something that you can just stick in any old warehouse. You have to think about, first is the recipe, being consistent with the recipe. But then you got to think about, okay, we're going to age this stuff for 23 years. Where do we need to put it? And you have to consider that in the environment. So we're lucky that we have a lot of variety of warehouses at the distillery, and we can take a 23-year-old product and find a good place for it to sit there and age. And we don't rotate barrels. So that barrel is going to sit there for 23 years or more. We did some 25-year-old, and that's a big consideration. So barrel selection, location, the recipes, and we want to be consistently making, hopefully some of the best whiskey out there. And, we continue to taste, 20, 23-year-old stuff that it's just outstanding, product. And, when people do get a bottle, they're, satisfied with that quality and maybe hopefully impressed, with the quality and happy that, happy they got that bottle.
Yeah, definitely. And I've always respected on all of your product is the prices for it at MSRP are reasonable. It's like what's going on secondary. I know you guys have tried to curb that a little bit, but I don't know that monster is curbable. It's a rough one and it's out there. But overall, the bottles, like all, your antique collection and everything, it's not like they're super expensive. They're right in line with where whiskey should be and what you're doing with them and the quality. And that's one thing, when people do get a bottle at MSRP, they are, you're just extremely happy to be able to pick that up.
Yeah, there's a couple of points there that are really important. We are of the size, our distillery is big enough to where, we can offer, we're able to offer a really good bourbon or whiskey or whatever we're making at a reasonable price. When you go out and, can find a bottle for a reasonable price, we believe that everybody should be able to enjoy the bourbon, no matter, what style they like. They should be able to find a bottle that they like. Now, you're right, we can't curb all of that, but we do want that message to get out that our retail price should be fair. And it's not us to blame for that because, we have seen the bottles, they'll be $5,000 or $6,000 a bottle, but that's not us, doing that. And I think we are getting that message out. I don't know if it gets all the way to consumers. Not all. We know it doesn't get to all of them, but distributors and people that are in the know that, that's not our. We charge a fair price, and we do that because it didn't cost that much. It didn't cost $5,000 to make that bottle of bourbon, so that's not fair to charge that to people. We do have some upper end stuff that is very expensive to make. The OFC, for example, is pretty expensive, a proposition. But, most of our bourbons should be fairly priced. And, for example, the 10-year-old Eagle Rare, super high quality bourbon that wins competitions all the time. Something fun to get and taste, and it definitely should be fair priced when you find it.
Yeah, I picked one up off the shelf for $31.99. Yes, definitely a fair price. Now, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, it's what I've noticed probably over the last 4 or 5 years, that for some reason, the quality of all bourbon seems to be going up. Even tasting ancient age, ancient, benchmark, it just seems like do you think maybe it has a lot to do with we're like on this run of hot summers, cool winter, kind of the whole thing where the aging of the whiskey, there hasn't been any negative years for aging the whiskey, and it's just pretty much been positive, and everybody's just taking advantage of that? Is that a possibility? Because like Eagle Rare, for instance, I was not a huge fan of Eagle Rare. I had the first couple bottles. It's a little, the rye was, there's a rye taste to it. But the last 2 bottles that I purchased, the sweetness of it and everything, I just love it. I mean, when I popped out the one I just got off the shelf, I think it was in June, It was better than anything I ever tasted. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. Like, you guys are always you're trying to keep a profile, but are you always trying to improve that profile?
Well, that's a good point. So the answer to that is always yes. I mean, we're always wanting to improve things, and we look at every process that we have. It's hundreds of processes, but we do that continuously. But we want it to be consistent. So that base flavor profile of Eagle Rare should be very similar, even from 20 years ago, because we haven't changed that recipe. But the one thing that has changed, a couple of things about that. You're right. There's no question that global warming is changing things. I mean, the aging process is feeling that. Now, percentage-wise, it's so small that taste-wise, I'm not sure that's impacting much yet. But let's say over the next 50 years, it's certainly going to affect things. There's no question. But the one thing that's out there for sure is technology. So even in my time here, I've seen the technology basically flip to where we're much better at managing our processes due to the technology. We can monitor things a lot closer. There wasn't one single computer in this distillery in 1995. So now we can really analyze and check. I mean, we have millions of data points to review and manage through all these processes. And it's definitely, if you care and you do the right things, it will definitely make things better and more consistent. That's funny you brought up Elmer earlier, because we had this very conversation about 20 years ago. And we talked about, how the good old days of making bourbon, and I was actually there during the good old days. And I know that we are a lot more consistent than we ever have been. And it's due to, like I said, technology and, a lot more care and management of the operation. So, things will, and that's probably across the board on all distilleries. Like you said, it's all whiskeys. People have the ability to manage it a little bit better now than, making it on the side of a mountain and, nothing wrong with moonshining, but, you tend to get a little better quality when you have more capabilities.
Well, I also think with like, you were there when there was no computer technology,
Mm-hmm.
and you understood the art form that
Mm-hmm.
was happening back then with the boiling points, when to turn off, and it was all done manually. And there's a lot of people who think that computerization has, like, what would you say, sterilized the process, taken the art out. But being an artist, I understand that it's just another tool in a distiller's arsenal, so that you don't have to worry about someone didn't, they let it go, it got a little too hot, or it didn't cool far enough, where you can control that now a lot more, and then the worry's gone. But at the same time, as the artist that you are, you now have all these tools to even experiment further how to get better quality out.
Yep, you nailed it. So, I used to actually keep a list of all the times that the new technology has avoided issues. And it got so big that, I finally just quit, and I convinced everybody and showed everybody the big differences. But it's definitely better, makes things more consistent. It gives you more flexibility. Like you said, you can create different products. I mean, 25 years ago, we basically had 2 recipes, and now I think the last count was 12. So we have 12 different recipes, and we're able to expand those recipes and make a lot of different whiskeys and bourbons. And I'm not even counting all of our experimental recipes. I haven't done that, but we've done 40 or 50 different experimental recipes. So it's just endless,
So you have the experimental program. So this is just a curiosity. What do you do with the whiskey that the experiment doesn't work, or it's not good? Is it just dump it out, or is there something that you can do with it?
We have done that before. We've dumped some whiskey out. We call it a failed experiment. Now, that's by definition a little different, because even for me as a scientist, I look at even a failed experiment as a, we learned a lot from it, right? So it depends on what you mean. When we say failed, we mean it doesn't taste good. That's what failed experiment means. But we actually learned a lot from the experiment and learned, some of the things you can't do. But we have before some of the whiskey actually bottled it up and labeled it as a failed experiment. Now we don't sell it, but we keep it at the distillery, and we use it to demonstrate and show people what could happen to whiskey if you don't do things properly. So we've had people that and we'll show them, okay, this is bad whiskey. I don't know if there's a lot of people in the world that have never tasted bad whiskey. What bad whiskey, what does it taste like? And you don't really know unless you've tasted it. It's just hard to explain it to people. So we use it for demonstration purposes, and we show people, why it was failed and what we think is bad. The funny thing is, we've had a few times where we have people taste the bottle and they think, oh, this is really good. And so it does depend on the person, but in our opinion, it was a failed experiment.
I mean, just think about it. People like blue cheese. I mean, I like blue cheese, but that overall, if the first time you taste blue cheese as a kid, you wonder why you would ever put that in your mouth again.
Yes,
so yes, there's no doubt that some people can think failed experiments taste good.
And we kind of go by, the definition of a really good whiskey based on, results of competitions and, what we think is good just based on experience. That's kind of how we go by that. But, there are people that like you said, different things and may like it, but the majority of the people wouldn't,
Right. Oh, and that's what it is. It's kind of like if you put a unique product out and the majority of the people they're paying money for it, you're going to get all this negative. That is a responsibility that you have to have the majority of the people thinking that, I mean, as a distiller, you can't make everybody happy. I'm sure every single batch of everything, even Pappy that goes out there's some people that come back and say, this isn't what it was supposed to be. People inherently are complainers, and you can't try and please everybody. There's no doubt about it.
No, but our goal is to try to please everybody. But you're right. There's always going to be some, naysayers out there. Good example of that, though, what you brought up was when we just recently released the Maltai type whiskey that was not a bourbon, right? And, when people taste our products, especially as an experiment, we said right on the label, Chinese Baijiu style whiskey. And we were just trying to show people that what you do with Americanizing basically that whiskey with American charred oak barrels and with our processing techniques and things. And I mean, that whiskey was good. It was a good tasting, it was different. It wasn't a traditional bourbon whiskey,
right?
But it's just something really good and a new flavor, and we got a lot of positive feedback from that. So.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, we taste Japanese whiskey, we taste Canadian whiskey, and it's not the same. If you're looking for it to taste like bourbon, it's not going to taste like bourbon. It's going to, they all have different Irish whiskey is, for me, I like it. It's fruity, but for whatever reason, 80 proof knocks me on my ass. Whereas I could be drinking Gorge T Stagg at 116 and I could have just as much and be just fine. So, they're just all the different styles really affect everybody personally different. And that's one of the great things about whiskey, right?
Well, and that's an excellent point. We do believe that a lot of the reason the popularity is there is because of the flexibility of a really good bourbon whiskey. When you pop that cork, you can do a lot of different things. You can make cocktails, drink it straight on the rocks, add it in food. You can do all kinds of things with bourbon. So I think that's one of the reasons it's so popular is, people realize that early on.
Yeah, the food pairing lately has been crazy. I've been going to a lot of different distilleries and their restaurants, and you get these bourbon food pairings, and they're either cooking with the bourbon glaze, they're either, I just had some mussels cooked in bourbon. I don't like mussels. He had some habanero sauce and a little marinara, and he cooked it, and it was too spicy for my wife, and she would have had 10, 11 of them. So I said, well, I'll try it because it was spicy, and it was absolutely delicious, adding that habanero with the bourbon. So yeah, the pairing that happens in the cooking and everything it's just been exploding. I mean, there's so many places that are opening that you can get this experience now.
And I'm probably biased, but the food's good. You know.
Oh, no, 100%. This is chef prepared food. I mean, I've eaten a lot of stuff probably in the last 8 months at restaurants that I wouldn't have chosen to eat. But what I like to do is go in, and when I'm doing one of these is just tell the chef to prepare me what he thinks is the best on the menu. So I've had some fish, you know, it's just beautifully prepared. It's delicious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun.
It could be the bourbon.
Yes, it could be. Well, I think it is. I think
it is too.
Yep. And then one of the Buffalo Trace. That's your staple bourbon, right?
Yep.
So right now, it's hard to keep it on the shelf. I mean, you know, here in Ohio and everything, you know, it's like you guys are going more production, but you know, when you walk into a liquor store, Jim Beam Black, those they just can keep that on the shelf. But your demand right now is so strong. But what's that like, not being able to keep Buffalo Trace on the shelf?
Well, in some ways it's disappointing. I mean, if we were smart enough to put enough away 8 years ago, but we would have had to plan 15 years ago, and we would have had to have a crystal ball, right? To be able to exactly, you know, we're a privately held company. It's, you know, money out of our pocket basically, right? To expand. And if we had the crystal ball and we knew the future, we would have made more, you know, we would have prepared and expanded 10 years ago. But so the unfortunate thing is we don't really know how much we could sell, because you're right. When those shelves go empty, then, you know, are we missing 10 cases? Are we missing 1,000 cases? We don't know. But we do know the demand is strong. We're very fortunate and happy about that. And we're also, you know, planning for the future based on today's demand. And in order to do that, we had to expand because we're running at capacity at not just this distillery, but our sister distillery in Bardstown is running at capacity. All of our smaller distilleries, we have 10 distilleries, and they're all running basically at capacity, trying to make enough whiskey for everybody. And you know, we have no plans of stopping. And the thing that's a little different for us, again, we're privately held. We're very little, we have a very little amount going international. Most of our sales are here in the U.S. So in the future, you know, the global market for us is our future as far as continuing to expand. And for some reason, if sales slow down or we get all the demand met here in the U.S., which we hope never happens, you know, we can release some more to the globe, you know, and that's exciting too.
Yeah, definitely that market. And hope right now it was a little bit put on pause with everything that happened, you know, but overall, you're right. I think the only thing that I see coming back, you know, from time to time that you have different expressions of Blantons going over there. I know that's kind of, I've tasted a couple, and that's kind of a cool program that you have there. So there was one other, just eluded me. There were the Buffalo. I had one more question and it just went out the door in my mind. Yeah, you got me talking about. So it's pretty much great to have you on there. Is there anything that I mean, I would love to come down at one point. Hopefully, it seems like some of this is starting to pass. So by spring, hopefully next year will be a little bit more normal or whatever. But I want to keep in touch with you. I'd love to meet you in person. I know it's kind of like your place in distilling at Buffalo Trace, and what you've done is amazing. But you know, I've just heard nothing but that you're just a down to earth kind of regular guy getting it done, you know. So
well, that's we don't really have a lot of choice. We got to get it done, right? Unless we just ignore everything. But we're like I said, we've got 550 people working hard, you know, every day, you know, making more bourbon and you know, trying to get it out there as much as possible, and no plans of stopping. So just keep the faith, you know.
Well, that's excellent. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, you know, you're doing all this expansion, but also you've got to deal with like general breakdowns of the existing plant, which you've been doing for a long time, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But you know, the bigger it gets, it's like you double your capacity, you're doubling your problems. But you know, do you have enough people delegated to do that, or you're going in there all the time? And that kind of, you know, I'm in recycling, and it's similar to not the final product, but we're dealing with hydraulics and equipment, and we're baling and whatever. And I'm the plant manager, so I deal, you know, a good day is a day that I didn't have to go in and fix 14 things.
Yeah, well, so you're very aware, but we have a lot of equipment, a lot of heavy equipment, a lot of things that we have are not on the shelf. So we've staffed up our maintenance and engineering quite a bit. We do not have enough help. So we're in the middle of hiring people, and we're hiring them about as fast as we can find them. That's the hard part, is we have to find good talent. But we definitely don't have enough people to cover everything. But we do have breakdowns and things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. The good thing is we have a lot of history. And we kind of know what to do when we do break down. We try to do all the, you know, right things as far as planning and spare parts and engineering that some of the breakdowns out, which is a big deal. But we got a lot of new equipment going in. But guess what? New equipment breaks too, just like the old stuff. That doesn't encourage me much at all, because I know that new equipment breaks, you know. But that's just part of the game. I mean, you got a lot of moving parts, and that's what they pay us for, to keep it going. So. Well,
even our trucking, we've got 18 semis that pick up and also deliver, and you guys have that same kind of trucking thing going. And there's 2 of our tractors have been down for over a month because there's no parts for it. It's just
that's a problem.
The lack of parts is just all of a sudden something you're just used to getting. All of a sudden it's not there.
Yeah, we have problems getting nuts and bolts and, you know, basic things that we got to have. And, you know, I think we counted up the other day, we've got 170 trailers sitting on site, you know, for pallets or barrels or glass or whatever we've got going on. And same issue, the glass has to arrive on time, and, you know, caps and labels and, like you say, parts. And, you know, we have the same issues everybody else is having. So it's on. Hopefully it doesn't get worse, because if it gets worse, we're going to really have a problem. But hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, that would be nice. I was thinking it would, you know, because when we first initially went through this, we got through, and it wasn't seeming to affect us as much as now we're being affected based off of the rest of the world, right?
Definitely.
So anyways, all right. I don't know what, I gotta just get rid of that. My phone is being picked up. There we go. All right. So thank you very much for your time. It was great to have you on. And,
good chat.
I'm going to stay in touch, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice to meet you. See ya.
Yep. Thanks. That was everybody. Harlen Wheatley of Buffalo Trace. It was great to have him on. We it was super to have him on. It was just awesome. Coming off of Kentucky Bourbon Festival, what I'd like to do now is cover our sponsors. I didn't get a chance to play the Maddie Gladden. I wonder if I can just play it. Let's see if I can. I'm going to put that out right now if I can.
Spirits of French Lick is proud to introduce the Maddie Gladden Bottled and Bond Bourbon. This 4-year aged bourbon is double pot distilled and non-chill filtered and has a full-bodied mouthfeel with eucalyptus, molasses, clove, ginger, and slight citrus as well as grains of paradise. The finish is long and reappearing on the back of the tongue with notes of pepper, tobacco leaf, and mint cream. All of our spirits are available for tasting and purchase inside the French Lick Winery and Distillery. Spirits of French Lick. Respect the grain, please enjoy responsibly, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
That is Alan Bishop of the Spirit of French Lick. And once again, what a wonderful master distiller. Actually, Alan called me on my birthday, made my day. So thank you very much, Alan. And then also we have our other sponsors, Watershed Distillery. Watershed Distillery is Ohio's largest craft distillery and producer of the #1 selling Ohio-made bourbon in the world. Open 7 days a week for tours and tastings. A home to Watershed Kitchen and Bar, one of the top 3 restaurants in Columbus. Watershed Distillery is a perfect destination for great bourbon, exceptional food, and amazing craft cocktails. Learn more and book your tour at watersheddistillery.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and always drink responsibly. Shout out to Ann Dimmick. We were able to get the limited edition. That's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday. I'll be podcasting the limited edition Watershed cask strength apple brandy finish, 6-year. We are so excited at the moment to have Watershed as a distillery. We stopped back and saw Ann on our way back. What they're doing there is just amazing. Love it. I'll be tasting that with Matt on Monday and Tuesday, maybe bringing in Xavier. So look forward to that. Now, when we were down when we went down to Kentucky Bourbon Festival, we got a chance to see Wally. Wally Dant was at the festival the whole time. I got to talk to him. All the Scotchy Bourbon Boys got to talk to him. Oh, what a wonderful person. Wally pretty much knows everybody, gives you the time, doesn't blow anybody, out of the water or anything like that. He's just a super guy, and he gives you the time and makes you feel important, that what you're doing and what's coming across is important. Log Still Distillery traces its roots back to Joseph Washington Dant's hollowing out a popular log to distill his first batch of Kentucky bourbon in 1836. And now, a new generation of distillers is coming in his footsteps, with Joseph Washington's great-great-grandson, Wally Dant, along with cousins Lynn Dant and Charles Dant as co-distillers. The campus is opening in phases through 2021 in Gethsemane, Kentucky. They've already opened their amphitheater. They're working on their distillery. And if you want more additional information, visit logstilldistillery.com. So covered that, but that was a fantastic podcast with Harlen Wheatley. I covered everything that I wanted to cover. It didn't work. Initially, he had the wrong link because I had sent a link. It's just my fault, but I was able to get him on, got him in. We started right away on this podcast with Harlen. I got it recorded and that'll be going up to YouTube soon, but also it was a little late starting on I didn't start it right away because I didn't think we were starting. So once I started it, I just started it straight into it. Hopefully everybody got to see what the information is on the audio podcast, but this has been a great interview. The Scotchy Bourbon Boys loved hooking up, and hopefully we'll be able to get down to Buffalo Trace and do an in-person podcast with Harlen. The information that he gave out answered all my questions, so I was extremely happy. Thank you very much, Harlen. And we are Oh, we are the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, www.scotchybourbonboys.com. Check out our website. Make sure you go to the Patreon button in the top right-hand corner. Click that, support us, please. If you're listening for the first time and you're coming here, please, on the podcast format, make sure that you click subscribe and also leave us feedback, because feedback means a lot to us. The podcast is starting to blow up. We're excited. We're full strength right now. We're gonna the podcasting. It's gonna be awesome going forward. I've got one more podcast to release from Kentucky Bourbon Festival. After this podcast, Chad and Sarah from It's Bourbon Night was on our podcast, and I'm excited. I'm working on the YouTube version of that, so I can release the YouTube at the same time that I release the podcast. But they came back on Sunday from the festival and did their Sunday night thing and mentioned us. So we appreciate what Chad and Sarah coming on to the podcast and then mentioning us. It's been awesome. They're two super great people. So if you've not heard of It's Bourbon Night on YouTube, you need to check them out. They are awesome. Love what they're doing and support them, especially the Scotchy Bourbon Boys definitely do support them. So remember, all podcast formats, we're on Facebook. Join our group, the Scotchy Bourbon Boys group. And if you're in the Ohio area, check out one of our meetings. We meet every 4 to 6 weeks. I think we're going to be meeting in the third weekend of October. I'm going to be setting that soon. And then also check out our Whiskey Live, which is every second and fourth Friday per month. And this second and fourth Friday, we will be partnering with Zabby. So this is a new thing that we're doing for a commitment into the Whiskey Lives. We will be tasting Michter's small batch bourbon. So start going out and getting the small batch. Join us that second Friday. I believe it's October 7th or 8th. Friday. It's the Friday. And then grab a bottle and taste along with us. We'll be live at 9 p.m. Eastern time, New York time zone. So with that said, everybody, this has been a phenomenal podcast, a little bit different than what I'm used to doing, but remember, bourbon equals good friends and good times, and go out there, live dangerously, and take chances.
Show me the way to the next whiskey bar.
See you next time, everybody.
Don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Don't ask why. Don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, tell you we must hide. Tell you we must hide. Tell you, I tell you we must hide.
All right. Welcome to the secondary YouTube. I'm just gonna, in honor of Harlen, he wasn't drinking, I wasn't drinking, but I got a little bit of Gorge T Stagg here, and I'm gonna put this in our new Scotchy Bourbon Boy Glencairns. This Glencairn is the Crystal Glencairn. We got a couple of them for ourselves. Hopefully the price point will be right and we can order them on our next order for sale. But right now, I'm having a 2017, I believe, Gorge T Stagg at 116.5 proof. I'm just gonna have a little sip and then with you. Oh, what did you think? That was just amazing. His wealth, knowledge, and friendliness Greg Schneider, shout out to you for giving me the inside information on the canoeing aspect of, but just his whole background. I've seen Harlen on other podcasts and Zoom, but the background of Buffalo Trace behind him, I just thought it was spectacular. So we had a great time. This next podcast, we're going to be tasting the Watershed 6th year. I can't wait. This will be Monday or Tuesday. We're going to bring in Super Nash, hopefully Xavier, and Matt's going to be here. But Matt went down to Kentucky Bourbon Festival. He had to come back early and everything, but we're going to go over the coolness that was Kentucky Bourbon Festival on our next one. So with that said, cheers, everybody. Oh, also, we did have on Martin Duffy, the Glencairn Glass, the Glencairn Glass sales representative of North America. He is responsible for us and everybody else being able to get their Glencairns with their logos and labels on. So having him on, if you haven't checked that podcast out, check that podcast out. Him and Lisa Roper Wicker were off the charts. All right. Till next time.